crime lab relied on two tests to say that Scott Davey could be the killer: the ABO typing test and polymorphic enzyme screening. The state maintains that was more than enough to convict.
I think that Mr. Davey was convicted because of the overwhelming evidence of his guilt. That evidence came from people that knew him and his wife, saw how he was, how this course of domestic violence escalated, became worse, became more threatening, became more violent.
But now an independent laboratory has retested the semen samples from the crime. Though the tests are not yet public, reportedly they may rule out Scott Davey completely as the source of the semen using the much more restrictive DNA identification method.
They are not too sure he can even be a donor of it.
The purpose of the pretrial discovery is, again, before you make a conclusion, is to look very carefully at the results that had been completed, or the results that came out and the testing procedures that were used previously.
Scott Davey was back in court today, his attorney asking for copies of the original notes and photos from the state crime lab tests.
I'm hoping we can show I didn't commit this.
Prosecutor Dave Nelson does not want to hand over the notes and photos.
Well, all of the information that has been sought by this petition has previously been turned over to one of the defendant's previous lawyers. He had an opportunity to examine it, had an opportunity to visit with our expert, Mr. Reese, on a couple of occasions, both over the telephone and in person, had an opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Reese at trial, and had every opportunity to get all of the evidence before the jury that they needed to decide this defendant's guilt.
Today's hearing was inconclusive. A foul-up at the Minnehaha County Courthouse meant that the court could not locate a necessary notice of petition as ever having been filed. Well, later in the afternoon, the court clerks found the mislaid petition. Presumably, presiding Circuit Court Judge Jean Paul Keene will now get a date, set a date to hear the petition for those state crime lab notes and photos.
In other news tonight, it's been more than 100 years since the Indian and cavalry battle that came to be known as Custer's Last Stand. And still, historians argue over what really happened there. But as John Miller reports tonight, the National Park Service is back at the Custer battle site at the Little Bighorn, armed with technology to try and find out.
More than 200 cavalrymen died at Custer's Last Stand. Their identities and the answer to how it all happened are buried here beneath the battlefield at Little Bighorn. But historians and scientists are most puzzled by what happened here at a section of battlefield called Deep Ravine.
Immediately after the fight, 3 days afterwards, burial parties discovered the bodies of about 28 7th Cavalrymen in the bottom of this ravine. But they haven't been seen since that day.
They'd like to unearth some answers without digging up an historical landmark.
And that's what we're trying to do here is scan an area that may contain the remains.
It looks sort of like a wheelbarrow, but this surveying device can do a whole lot more than move dirt. It can look 6 feet beneath it. Designed to locate buried waste material, scientists hope it can also find buttons or bullets or pocket knives and help them learn more about the U.S. cavalry soldiers.
We're finding many of them have back problems at 22 years of age. They have bad teeth, broken bones that have healed, stomped feet from being around horses.
Now they're hoping these machines will provide more images, solving the mystery of what happened to those last 28 soldiers at Custer's Last Stand, digging deep into a hazy piece of American history without leaving a scratch.
By the way, even if human remains are found, they likely will not be dug up.
A weekend getaway to Lake Francis Case is not such a good idea this week. The Game, Fish, and Parks Department says the lake is at its highest level ever, about 12 feet above normal summer elevation. That means some state and federal parks and many boat ramps along the reservoir are closed. The water is being held back in the reservoir to keep from making flooding along the Missouri River downstream worse than it already is.
Who says that nothing is free anymore? South Dakota State Parks are hosting a free open house for the weekend, not only to let people know what they have, but to show off some new features. As Ted Copy reports, this is a marketing strategy for the future.
It's one of the first truly nice weekends to get outside in South Dakota, and for state park lovers, it couldn't come at a better time. For the next 2 days, the state has dropped the $2 per person entry fee in the name of advertising. Open House Weekend includes free admission to state parks and free fishing. It's the state's way of welcoming visitors back and hopefully attracting some new ones.
What we really hope happens is they decide to come back again and start becoming a park user.
And for those park users, this year, the state has implemented a new centralized reservation system. Campers wishing to reserve a spot simply call an 800 number now rather than the individual park. The state parks then get the reservations over this computer. In the past, reservations cost $6. Now, they're free, but you have to pay for the camping spot when you make the reservation. Park officials say that's to cut down on the number of no-shows and one other reason.
Our parks have become so busy over the last few years. Our visitations have grown and grown. And some of the parks, their office staff just could not handle all the calls coming in.
Bottom line, Steck says, they want to better serve people who come here to get away. At Palisades State Park, Ted Copy, News 5.
And South Dakota state parks are celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. Well, if you don't want to ride in the boat this summer, maybe you'll want to ride behind the boat on water skis. Well, Beth Fuller never did that until today, and as she reports from Catfish Bay north of Sioux Falls, she had some professional coaching when she took the plunge.
You see the pros and maybe even your friends flying across the water, and it looks so effortless and like so much fun. So for those who've always dreamed of riding the waves, Catfish Bay Water Ski Park offers lessons, even for beginners. I've never touched a water ski before, so Jim Bruns and Bob Euchre from the Sioux Falls Water Ski Club started my lesson on land, so I could get a feel for the tug of the rope.
The boat will pull you, and you basically, it'll kind of stand you right up. What you want to do is try and pull that handle into your hips, and don't let it pull you forward. You want to keep your knees bent.
That's not supposed to happen. Keeping legs slightly bent and arms straight are key, but most important is working with the boat. This will be easy.
No problem.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's go.
The first thing I learned today is every skier has his or her own tips, and reminders from coworkers were causing anxiety as we headed for the water.
All right, these boots aren't tight, right? Because Ted told me that if my boots are tight, my legs are going to get shredded.
My first time out was a little overwhelming. Actually, so were the following 5 attempts. On my 6th try, I caught a glimpse of success.
Sometimes victory is sweet, but short.
The next time, everything clicked, and I skied around the lake twice, which is the whole idea.
Doesn't matter if you're a junior or an adult. It's, lessons available for everybody. There are private lessons. There are group lessons.
So you too can experience the thrill, the anxiety, and the agony that comes with water skiing. Near Sioux Falls, Beth Fuller, News 5.
If you are interested in learning how to ski, Catfish Bay will be offering.
And he, of course, told his wife to run get the camera, and she did not volunteer to do that. Instead, he had to go get it and got this great shot. We thank him for sending that in, and we remind you, of course, please, if you are caught outside with a tornado, head to the ditch or find a culvert for safety. Currently in Sioux Falls, no severe weather in our forecast, just very nice weather conditions. Clear and 59 right now, dew point at 53, and west winds are now blowing at 10 miles per hour. And our pressure continues to rise now. Cold front has moved through, and it is at 29.93. And we are finding temps generally still in the upper 50s to lower 60s. 61 right now in Brookings and Worthington, also Minneapolis. 54 in Aberdeen, and the winds are gusting northwest at 24, as high as 30 miles per hour. And some of those breezes may come down to Sioux Falls. Earlier I thought we'd see some light winds, but there's some...
It started off to be a pretty nice day, but